180, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And there's two cases there. There's one of costs that were incurred by default on PAYE and penalties that were incurred, and the official was given counselling. Now, I'm assuming that counselling is probably capacity training and not counselling for mental anguish. So I'm a bit confused in the word counselling there. And then if I look at the very next one, where an official is responsible for incurring costs for a VAT return, that individual is then given a warning. I fail to understand what the difference is. If you have an official who's failed to comply in PAYE submissions, why was that person also not given a written warning? That's all from my side. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Honourable Rogers. Just on this counselling, this issue of counselling, you'll recall that our legal advisor did provide us with some advice, and this is part of the steps taken in instituting discipline. But I'm sure the department can speak. Okay, then the other thing, just to remind ourselves, is that, unless I'm mistaken, this is also a department that's supposed to be merged or rationalized or whatever. We haven't had any comment, but I'm sure the HOD will tell us. Honourable Nkosi?
No, Chairperson, I had 4 questions. I won't ask the third one. No, I like great R questions. You have inferred to one of such questions. The question that I want to pose to the entity is around the question of whether you will be affected by a rationalization process. I can't remember which other entity that you are matching on. I'm asking it so that I arrive to the reality as to why people are acting in almost every position. So that's the context. I'm posing that question. The second one, CFO, is around the question of the SCM person. I can't remember whether you said manager or something else, but that SCM vacancy that you have advertised and all the stuff. But you fell short of telling us as to by when will that post be filled in terms of your own processes. You know, that's the second question that I'm interested in. And I also got lost around the question of the irregular expenditure of the previous audit, the 8.1. I could hear that more than 2 million has been condoned by the provincial treasury, which we appreciate very much. I wanted to find out if the difference has been submitted to the provincial treasury. I missed that part. On the counselling, Honourable Rogers covered me. So that's why I'm posing only 3 questions.
Honourable Nkosi, before we hand over to the department, I just wanted to raise this matter and get some feedback. You see, there's this issue. This is like similar, you know, where there's a bit of a kind of disagreement, I think, with the Auditor General on the issue of the use of agencies. Because here we are told that Tourism KZN had used an agency, and the AG had, marked that as irregular expenditure because it was an amount of 5.230 million, right? And what is being reported in the response is that the Tourism KZN had gone to the SCM unit at Provincial Treasury and are awaiting an opinion and recommendation on the finding before making a submission for condonation. If there's any feedback on that, okay, we'll hand over to the department. Entity.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable Members. I think the first one thing that has been raised by Honourable Rogers is the Bollywood syndrome that is prevalent in the public service. I must indicate that it is not unique. which is also linked to what Honorable Nkosi has raised. When you rationalize institutions, the first thing that you want to do, we don't want to create duplications and create some confusion in the new institution. Unfortunately, when it comes to the positions of the CEOs and CFOs, and I think that's where the problem is, and this rationalization has taken even more than 6 years, I'm told. Hence, now you have those structures, because when you create a new institution, is to ensure that you have a single CEO and a single CFO. Otherwise, you are likely to run into problems. Unfortunately, with regard to this process, we needed to come with new legislation, which is something that we never anticipated, I assume, when this process was initiated. It is for that reason why we've been asked to fast-track the issue of the bills so that we are clear about the new structures that will be created. As I reported earlier, GTEC is helping the new entities that will be formed, because the tourism, KZN and Zemvelo, that are participating in that process, they must shape the new structure. Of course, when the new structure is created, we may have to create a competitive process to fill those positions, unless the law does not permit. Of course, then we have to deal with direct placement of the incumbent at that level. So that's the reason why you have those vacancies at the CEO and the CFO level, and is happening also in other structures that are affected. The other question that was raised as to the issue of the contract of a person that has since left. What do we do to ensure that that person does not emerge in another government department? So coming from national government and knowing the process very well, what we actually do is that you have to report these to National Treasury and DPSA. There's a system that we use so that to ensure that a person does not feature in another government department, but it must be clear. It must have been a serious misconduct case, so we're clear in terms of what we're doing. So when you look at the code of conduct for the public servants as well as the disciplinary code, that is very clear, and that what do we do if a person has misconducted himself when it comes to financial misconduct. So we have to report that. So I think if that's the case, the entity will have to report that to both the PSA, because they have to make sure that there's an alignment between the HR management system and the financial management system. So it must report to Treasury and TPSA so that the person does not move. So that's how we deal with it. There's no any other system that we have so far. It's still part of the discussion at the national level as to how to ensure that what you see in local government doesn't happen. That's why when we promulgated the Pfma in 2015, what we wanted to do is to avoid this issue of movement and make sure that we've got a single state or single public service. But we are yet to review that legislation, which will address that problem. The issue of counselling and warning, it depends on the gravity of the case, because we apply what we call progressive discipline. Otherwise, we end up firing everybody in the public service, because we always have these challenges. And what we want to do is to ensure that a person learns and grows within the organization and he becomes a better person. When he leaves the public service, he must have learned and become a better manager. Otherwise, what we'll have is that you'll fire everybody and there'll be no one. So that's why we apply progressive discipline. However, if it's a serious case, of course, a person must then be subjected to full disciplinary hearing, as it were. The entity that is involved here, Honorable Nkosi, it's tourism and Zemvelo. So there will be sorry. Now I'm because I was the head of Zemvelo here. It's Film Commission rather. They will be merging both of them. That's the entity that will be part. I think the other issues I will then leave to the member of the board and the CEO and the CFO to deal with. Thank you very much.
Thank you, HOD. And perhaps if I can just deal with the other matters from Honorable Nkosi and the Chair, and with the last issue from Honorable Nkosi linked to the Chair's question on the SEM manager. Yes, when we did not renew the contract of the SEM manager, we went on a recruitment process, and we have a new SEM manager that is now running that unit. So the post has been filled. On the issue of the difference of the 8 million rand irregular expenditure, and linked to the Chair's question as well, whether we actually have submitted to Treasury or not yet. We have not yet submitted to Treasury the condonation request. And the reason being, after our discussion with the AG, we are advised by AG that given the fact that within the tender, it allows for the agency to procure services from third parties, because that was the whole issue, to say the tender has an amount for the monthly retainer, but it then has clauses that say, so I'll give you a typical example. If we want to market the destination in Gauteng, and we believe the audience we want to talk to is at SAFM, then the agency would procure the partnership with SAFM. We wouldn't go and say, Metro FM quote as well and Kaya FM, because we're looking for that audience at SAFM based on a number of insights into the market we want to market to. So the argument from AG was, but those services that were procured, we need to demonstrate that when we went into them, apart from those that are very specific, we need to show that the competitive process still was engaged in. So CFO, in terms of the suppliers now, which internally it is part of the policy and engagement with agency, that when we procure services to third parties, we must have 3 codes at least. And of course, the specifications around women, previously disadvantaged and so on. So he's doing that task. The only challenge we've had, which is the reason why we haven't submitted yet, is that that agency's 3-year contract came to an end. So by the time of the finding, it no longer was an agent of the organization. And so we're collating the information to be able to demonstrate that the difference, which is the 5 million, was procured properly by the agency on behalf of the entity utilizing that 3-code system. So once we finalize that, we will then submit to Treasury, and given the information we have, we are quite confident that we will get a condonation in that regard. And so that then gives clarity as to why we haven't submitted yet. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chairperson, I just want to bring this to the attention of the House. Malandela, at one stage, the shareholder would come to us as members of the board and say, I want a billboard in a particular area. And then you, as the Audit and Risk Committee, you'd say, what was the criteria that was used to comply with that mandate? In terms of the Auditor General, he would say, why did you choose that particular spot? And we had a big fight with the AG about that issue, to say that each and everyone wants to have publicity, will choose the areas that are very lucrative to that particular shareholder or whatever. That is just an example where the Auditor General would say, how do I know that that billboard is not owned by your friend? That's why you're opting for that. Another example is when people will come to us and say, I want to bring in Kaiser Chiefs in KZN because it has massive support in KZN. In terms of the AG, he would say to you, why was it not Wits University? Why Chiefs? And a person who lives in KZN would understand as to why a person would say, I want Kaiser Chiefs because of the support that it has. So I'm saying sometimes you'd have these issues with the AG, which are not the real life that we go through on a daily basis. And the last one that I learned, Chair, was the contracts that we have experienced. What the HOD is saying is true. This is affecting us as members of the Audit and Risk and the board, wherein you'd have a contract with Vodacom or MTN or whatever. Because we are not sure about our future, you can't enter into a new contract with that company. As a result, we'll come back to this Scopa next time around and you'll say, why are you having irregular expenditure? because those companies, you were supposed to cut the umbilical cord to them. But because we want to survive as an organization, we'll carry on a month-to-month basis. But the AG doesn't allow you to do that because it's saying, go out to the market. Now, you can imagine in the market who's going to be interested to sign a 2-month contract with you because we are not sure about the measure that the HOD was talking about. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. I think colleagues will have to frame a resolution around rationalization and merging of entities, because it's close on to 10 years now? That's how long it is, actually. It's ridiculous. And it's not just an issue about it. Well, it's service delivery. It's, as you can see, adverse audit findings. And you can understand the dilemma of the board. And it has an impact on staffing and obviously service delivery as well. The entity that is supposed to be merging here is the Film Commission, as I understand. So I think even in terms of their audit outcomes, the delays have had an impact in terms of vacancies as well. So this is the thing. All right. Colleagues, any follow-up on either side of the table? There's certainly no hands from the virtual platform I have checked. Are we covered? Okay. We do have some follow-up resolutions, just for you to know. We will be following up on your condemnation on that issue of the marketing agency, on the issue of the rationalization, and obviously the vacancies as well. So thank you very much. We can release you. There is lunch. You can help yourselves, right? Thank you very much. The next entity we'll be seeing, colleagues, is the IDFC, right? Italia Development Finance Corporation. Colleagues, we really need to follow up on this rationalization thing. It's just too long. Look, we're almost at the end of term of this current, and I don't know when it's going to happen, really. And the implications are serious. We keep saying we want to improve our audit outcomes in the province. And, vacancies and all these things are not improving. Sometimes I think we shoot ourselves in the foot. Let's just welcome the team representing the IDFC. You are welcome. We have with us here people on the virtual and the physical platform. So there's members of Scopa across from you. We also have Scopa members on the virtual platform. We have Treasury on the virtual platform. We have, I think, portfolio committee members as well who are part of the virtual platform. So we'd like to welcome you. And without further ado, we'll ask that you, each of you, names yourself, swears to take an oath, those affirms to speak the truth, and then we'll go into the presentation.
Thank you very much, Chair, honorable members, and my colleagues. I am Pearl Bengu. I'm the Group Chief Executive of IDFC. I take an oath to take the truth and nothing, to talk the truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson.
Continue.
My name is Roshan Moore. I'm the chairperson of the IDFC board, and I'm joining you virtually and the house virtually. And I also raise my right hand and affirm to speak the truth. And thank you very much on behalf of the board to allow us the opportunity for the team to present the responses and take questions from the Honorable House. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Chairperson of the board. Let's move on.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Good afternoon to you and good afternoon to the honorable members. My name is Babala Mapisa. I'm the Group Chief Financial Officer at Itala Development Finance Corporation. I hereby swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. So help me God.
Thank you. I can see there's been a relocation here from EdTier to IDFC. All right. Okay, then without further ado, let's go into your presentation. You can share your screen with us. But as you are getting ready, let me just point out that the resolutions you will be responding to start at Resolution 166, which deals with impairment losses. Then we go to Resolution 167, which is the internal control deficiencies. 168, which is the condonation of irregular expenditure. And 169, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. 170, investigations. And then transversal resolutions, the filling of critical vacant posts. So those are the resolutions we would want you to respond to. You don't need to read the resolution out. Members have them. Just deal with your responses. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chair.
Please, could you just share your screen?
I'm just struggling with locating the link, Chair. I was waiting for PLO to forward it to me. I'm not sure, Chair, if maybe Secretariat can project in the meantime. Okay, do I have it? Yes. Okay.
Okay, no, go ahead, Honorable Rogers. Let's just do that. Cover, allow him to shoot.
Going in.
Okay, the CFO is logging in, so we'll get the screen now. Thanks for the offer, Honorable Rogers.
Should I need? Okay. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thanks. We can see your screen.
I think I'm muted. Oh, okay. All right. Thank you once again. Good afternoon to you, Honorable Chairperson and the honorable members. I will be taking you through the responses that were provided by the IDFC to the resolutions that were taken by this esteemed committee in respect of the 2020-2021 audit reports. I will just reflect, Chair, before we go into the actual resolutions and indicate that the entity had received a financially unqualified audit opinion from the AG. The one finding that was included in the audit report related to misstatements in the financial statements. The other areas, Chair, are in respect of matters that the AG was emphasizing on, which the AG wanted to bring to the attention of the users of the financial statements. If we then head straight to the second slide, which is in respect of Resolution 166, not sure why it's not moving on your screen, as I am now on slide number 2. Okay. So in respect of the loans and advances, as well as impairment losses that were recognized by the entity, we are highlighting that because the IDFC is a developmental finance institution, the credit criteria for granting loans to applicants of the IDFC is far more relaxed or far more flexible than it is for commercial banks. And in this regard, it does expose the entity to a unique risk, as the risk appetite is higher than ordinarily what you would find in a commercial bank. And the lack of security or own contribution in some of the deals that are signed may then lead to the disregard for the IDFC to be able to enforce its collection effort. However, we had also identified that there was an inadequate lack of post-investment business support, which would have been intended to provide expert advice as well as hand-holding some of the clients when there are problems that are identified at an early stage. The entity is embarking upon 5 strategies that are aimed at turning around the NPLs of the loan book. The first one is a proactive and preventative measures. This means that the entity is proactive in identifying challenges early on through active monitoring of the business performance, as well as the increased identification of signs of distress before the business fails, intervening at a much earlier stage as soon as there are signs that the client is not meeting their projections in terms of the projected revenue, as well as the projected cash flow, and then also providing business support as soon as there are signs of distress, amongst other interventions that are being deployed. The second one is through aggressive collections, and this is done through the post-investment management collections on stages 1 and stage 2 portfolios that are reinforced on a continuous basis. Aggressive client visits. Every client in arrears is visited on an ongoing basis. Every client on first installment due is visited before the installment date to confirm that the business is on track in terms of delivery. And any client that demonstrates early warning signals is also visited. There are SMS reminders that are also sent to clients in terms of unpaid messages, as well as the consequences of not paying on time. And then also ensuring that the post-investment officers have the resources to execute their functions, which includes allocating them with cell phone allowances. The third area that the entity has embarked upon is a restructuring drive. This was mainly on the clients that were affected by COVID-19, as well as the unrest that took place in the province in the previous year. So there has been an identification of those accounts that had a potential of being turned around and putting them through the process of restructuring those loans. And to date, most of them are currently up to date. And then D, as part of looking at the overall health of the loan book, there has been a review of loans that are past due, where there is a potential for write-off, and it's fully provided for in terms of the policy of the entity, where also there are accounts that have a less likelihood of legal recovery process. So although the write-off would be undertaken in terms of the policy as well as the accounting treatment, the legal department still continues to pursue those specific clients, as well as the sureties that would have been in place for the outstanding debt. The other area, which is the last area that has been looked at, is expediting the legal recoveries. So there are clients that are being subjected to this process, and legal services reports on the progress on a monthly basis. We've then provided an update in terms of the 23rd of March as the reports that were submitted to the committee were as at the 31st of January. So by 23rd of March, through the efforts that I've spoken to previously, an amount of 80.1 million rand has been collected from 6 clients who were in arrears. This was as a result of the concerted efforts by the debtors management team as well as legal services, and those accounts were all settled in full. Also, there was a restructuring of 25 accounts, which had a collective balance of 30 million rand, and those accounts are now up to date. They are being closely monitored to ensure that they maintain the good performance. In terms of Resolution 167, which related to the internal control deficiencies that resulted in the misstatements on the financial statements, we had committed to appoint an IFRS technical consultant to assist with an independent review of the group financial statements for compliance with IFRS. This would ensure that the group complies with all the requirements of the accounting standards, and we can indicate that as at the 23rd of March, which is today, that consultant has been appointed, and they will be assisting the group before the financial statements are submitted to the AG. In terms of the irregular expenditure that was not yet condoned at the end of 2020-2021, we are indicating there that 1.2 million rand of that irregular expenditure has been submitted to the provincial treasury to request for condonation. The balance of that expenditure is still under review to assess if there was any value for money derived on the amounts that have been paid. This is in line with the irregular expenditure framework, in that before you submit a request to the provincial treasury to condone any irregular expenditure, there is some work that would need to have been done, which includes the review of value for money received, as well as other activities, consequence management, etc. So we are awaiting for the conclusion of that assessment in the first quarter of the next financial year, after which then the irregular expenditure will be processed accordingly. In terms of the next item, which is fruitless and wasteful expenditure of 688,000 rand, this amount was incurred in the previous financial years. There was an official that was subjected to a disciplinary process, which outcome ruled in favor of that official. And as a result of that, the matter is currently being processed to the board of the IDFC through the audit committee for a write-off, as it is considered not to be recoverable, based on also a legal opinion that was received from an external legal services provider. The entity had planned to table the item at the audit committee, which was held in February, but it was not tabled as there was no in-committee meeting of the committee, and it shall therefore be tabled in the first quarter of the financial year. I will indicate that to date, there has been no irregular or fruitless and wasteful expenditure that has been incurred by the entity, both in the 2021 financial year as well as the current financial year. Both the cases that I've spoken to relate to legacy contracts that were in place at the entity. In terms of the investigations that are undertaken by the entity, we've provided a list of the investigations that are currently underway, which is on Table A, which is in slide number 9, as well as Table B, which is in slides number 10 to 11. Slide number 9 then deals with investigations that were in progress. There was an investigation or an allegation that was reported to the entity. Upon further assessment and investigation, the allegation could not be substantiated and that matter was closed. It referred to allegations of soliciting a bribe to the amount of 500,000 based on the actions that were taken by internal audit, that allegation could not be substantiated and therefore no further action will be undertaken in respect thereof. The next couple of investigations then talk to the review into multiple fraudulent activities by a Natala employee on contractor payments for properties maintenance project. And the findings that emanated from that report was that there was an inflation of invoices from service providers, which was a collusion between a former employee of the entity as well as service providers. There were also internal control deficiencies that were identified through the investigation, particularly in the payment processing section. And then the former employee also diverted certain funds to other service providers, and they would share the ill-gotten funding. The amount involved there was just over R1 million, and the recommended action there was a disciplinary action, the reporting of the matter to SAPS, as well as legal recovery. And the entity has subjected SCM staff to training in terms of processing of invoices as well as work procedures, and there is also a consideration of a disciplinary action that should be taken that is appropriate to the findings that have been identified, just to indicate that those employees were not part of the scheme that was occurring between the former employee as well as the suppliers. A criminal case has been registered, and the case number is provided for the attention of the committee. And there is an attorney that has also been appointed with the civil recovery proceedings whilst the criminal case is also underway. In terms of the list of investigations that were undertaken in the 2020-2021 financial year, we've listed the investigations as well as the status of those investigations and the timelines by which we anticipate the investigations to be concluded. At the time of concluding this report, we had reported that 5 investigations had been concluded. As at the 23rd of March, the report that is dated 27th November 2017, alleged irregular withdrawal of litigation process against financial institution and client, has been concluded as well. And then if you move over to the next slide, 2 more investigations have also been concluded on the next slide. The first one being the report that relates to the 5th of September 2020 in respect of unauthorized debit orders from Idfc Absa business account, as well as the one for the 4th of December 2020, that is in respect of multiple procurement irregularities that were identified. So all those 3 reports have also been issued and completed as at the date, in fact, as of today. And then on the resolution that related to the filling of critical positions, we've listed the critical positions that existed at the entity as at the 31st of January 2022. However, the committee is to note that the recruitment drive is also informed by the availability of funds within the organization to fund those vacancies, as the Idfc is a business enterprise that is self-sustaining. It generates its own revenues, and therefore the filling of those posts is informed by the availability of the funding. As at the date when the report was submitted to the CAP committee, which was the 31st of January, there were 26 positions that were identified as critical. Over and above the report that has been submitted to the committee, I can indicate that 8 of those positions, as at the 23rd of October, have been filled, and then the balance are at varying stages of the recruitment process. That brings me to the end of the resolutions. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I'm not sure if the Group CE has any additions to make. Thank you, Chair. Through you.
Thank you. Are there any additions? The Chairperson of the Board, anything to add? All fine. Okay, colleagues, then the floor is open to you. And to those on the virtual platform. Show of hands, please. I see Honorable Rogers, Honorable Kaula, Honorable Zulu, Honorable Nkosi, Honorable Chinga. Okay, let's take you in that order.
Thanks, Chair. Sorry, I was trying to find a document and I'm going to delay you for 2 seconds. Can I go back to the resolution dealing with the loans and advances impairment? I fully understand that Itala is not a commercial bank and therefore is not as strict as a commercial bank when it comes to this type of loans. But at the same time, to lose 288 million and then 444 million, you've almost doubled it in a year. I wonder if perhaps you can give us your 2021 figure to see, in fact, if there's been any improvement. So a couple of questions and a couple of comments. What is that percentage? What is the 444 million as a percentage of your total loans? And the figure that you've quoted there, the 444 million, is it just the capital amount or is it capital and interest that is due to you? If it's only capital, it means your books would also be reflecting interest that remains unpaid. Now, I would honestly have thought that even though you're not a commercial bank, that before loans are granted, that business plans and accurate business plans that are assessed are in fact put in place, and that those business plans are tied up with cash flow plans, and that is monitored on a regular basis so that you can very quickly detect whether in fact there's a business in distress. Because if you've got to wait for a business to be in arrears for 3, 4, 5, 6 months, then it's too late. Then the horse is bolted and you end up in the situation that you've got now. Now, the other question I have, the figures that you quote, the 288 million and the 444 million, was none of that debt ever recovered? So in other words, if you're lending a business money, surely there would have been assets. Some of the businesses would have had assets. You would have financed assets. Would those assets not have been on a forced sale to try and recover some of those debts? I want to end off by also raising my concern, Chairperson. If I look, and forgive me, I forget the resolution, but Itala has now appointed a technical consultant to look at the, I assume it's the audited financial statements. If I understand it right, the IFRS. Is it not your financials? Sorry, I can't hear.
Sorry, through the chair, just for IFRS standards, not for the whole financial statements.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So my question still remains. Do you not have anybody with that capacity in your institution that can actually fulfill that role? Because if you're dealing with finance and you're dealing with the legislation that goes around the finance, and you're saying to us you need a consultant to assist you, then that's a red light for me. And perhaps you can also just tell us, did you budget for the technical consultant? If so, what is the cost of that process? Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Honorable Kaula.
Thanks, Chair, honorable members in the department, ETIA and the Idfc. Chairperson, I'm on the issue of the slide on impairment losses. and the turnaround strategies that have been reported by Thala. Chairperson, those strategies to me sound like they should have been normal business strategies which are not responding to problems. It makes me wonder then, what was the case before? If the turnaround is this one, it means that there was no aggressive collection before. It means that there was no aggressive follow-up before, and so on and so forth, which makes me wonder, Chairperson, as to how much has Itala lost because of there being no aggressive follow-ups. You know, people borrowing money, doing business, and thereafter coming to and pleading insolvency. It makes me wonder, have you looked into those? Because it may happen that it has also been a strategy by some scrupulous people to rip you off. Because if you are only starting now to implement those, then what has been happening before? And secondly, Chair, the slide 13 that talks to the filling of vacant posts, when I went through this, I was shocked, Chairperson. How have you been operating? You know, without all these very critical positions being filled, no wonder then people are doing as they please. They take your money, go away, and there are no follow-ups. How can you operate with so many critical posts not being filled when they are getting filled just now? Thanks, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Zulu.
Thanks. Thank you, Honorable Chair. I am partly covered by the Honorable Kaula when he was talking on the critical position. I think it's CFO who has been consistently saying it has been advertised, but obviously it will depend on the finances. So the question that I might have is, are these posts budgeted for? When we're advertising, do we have budget for the processes to follow? Things?
Three questions, Chairperson. The first one is a grade R question. I would want to find out if the MAPISA that made the presentation is the same MAPISA that was employed by ETIA. That's one question. People look the same, you know, we're all in the image of God. Then I wanted to find out, I would want to find out if it is the same MAPISA. Is she no longer in ETIA? No, I wanted just to clarify, to be clarified on that one. The second one is almost linked to what Honorable Rogers raised, but I wanted to find out exactly if you do have the exact figure around the accounts that are likely to be written off. And I'm so much interested in that one. The last one is for interest sake, is more than 80 million that had to be collected through the legal force. I wanted to find out what were the people who were owing you saying when they were not paying. What were the reasons for them for not to pay such a huge amount? 6 people and that huge amount. I wanted to find out on those 3. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Nkosi. And you know, Honorable Nkosi, when I welcomed the department and they took the oath, I did acknowledge that there had been a move but you were not listening, I think, to me. I think you were preoccupied looking at Ms. Mapisa. Okay, Honorable Shinga.
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to the Chair, the honorable members, the HOD, as well as the team from Ithala Development FC. I am partly covered, but on the first question, but I will still ask it on Resolution 166 on loans and advances. I had a question linking up with what the honorable members has said, on your monitoring and evaluation. I see now the inclusion of the post-investment monitoring office. So I had a question, how did you operate before without allocating this person or this person's role being attached to the person who is taking out the loan? How did you monitor? I know honorable members have elaborated. I won't. And then the second question on the filling of critical posts. The presenter started there. Her opening statement was that we need to remember that Ithala generates its own income. They are not allocated a budget. So my question is, these critical posts that are not filled now, I am confused if they are as a result of unavailability of funds or it's just a delay. I am saying that based on your opening line or that statement, if you can just paint a picture, or is it slow or delayed as a result of unavailability of funds, or it's just the process that is slow? Thank you, Chair.
Honourable Member, before I hand over to the department, I just want to raise a concern on my part, or an issue, and I'm sure we can get some clarity. I think the CFO reported that there were 8 of 26 vacancies that had been filled. And it's actually the last resolution. It's a transversal 290. But there's a table that we've got on page 5, which outlines the various posts and the timelines. And of those, 1, 2, 3, 4, there are 5 that have been appointed in December, but the balance, which come to around about 22 or maybe 26, as the CFO reported, all of them actually have, under comments, have time frames which end at the latest the 1st of February 2022. Right? Others, you say that the appointment is to be made by 1 March 2022. So my question here, and if you look at all of them, colleagues, if you just scroll down, you'll see. Right. So my question here is simple. We are now on the 23rd of March 2022. So can we then have an update as to whether these appointments have been effected? We'll hand over to the entity.
Thank you very much, Honourable Chair. Honourable members, again, I'll start with the first question from Honourable Rogers. The commercial, though we're not working like commercial banks, yes, we do not work like commercial banks, but on bigger loans, we have started to, ask for security. But if you look at our policy, we only take the viability of a business plan. Definitely, we want a business plan, and then would like to see where's your market and all the requirements that are there. And if your business plan is viable enough, in some cases, we don't really look at the security. So I think the security part, that's where we don't really go aggressively like the commercial banks as IDFC. Even to date, we do that. Now, if you look at the amount of 240 million and 444 million, which is the amount of the impairment, it has gone up solely because of the people that were under COVID. They were unable to pay. And then again, remember, if you look at our agricultural book, we've been saying that because of the drought a lot of our agricultural book is not working very well. And because of the cane farmers, the sugar cane farmers, some of them are still, not paying us very well. We have a lot of them that are not paying. But the amount has gone up as well because of the introduction of the IFRS standard, where when you write a loan today, if you want 100 million from Itala, okay, that's too much for Itala. Let's say 10 million from Itala would be able at the very same time as we write up your loan, there's a percentage that you must put as impairment, as the money that you might not be able to pay. The full amount is not that people might not be able to pay. It's the money that is in arrears, and it's the money that has been, like with the standards, the IFRS standard has been calculated. Now, if you look at the amount of this 444 million, we have recorded that we have we have collected about 80.1 million, which is part of that amount. We are collecting from that amount. We are hoping that as we collect, that 444 million will be less. But you see that the challenge is that we have to balance. As we collect more money from our clients, we must write up more loans in our books so that our percentage is not that less, because if we have less amount in our books, we have to keep our books. We've put a budget that at least we must be over 1.2 billion. At the moment, we are less than $1 billion. So as you reduce some of the loans by paying them off, the book is shrinking, and then the percentage of the loans that are still there not paying, it doesn't help much. You won't see the difference. And you have requested that it's I would say more or less at the moment, the 444 million is about 49% of the total book. But we have some of the strategies that are there that we still need to use, so that we definitely have to diversify our book as Itala. We're looking at approaching bigger businesses, though we know that ours is for SMMEs, but not really to give them money, but bigger businesses that are not struggling, that don't need to come to us, that are going to help us with more interest, so that we're able then to give more money to the smaller SMMEs. That's one strategy that we are busy with, and it has started to kick off. So on those amounts, that's what we're saying. But even if we write off, definitely we will need to recover. There is that bad debt recovered area that needs to be done. And then I will just leave the one for IFRS standard. The CFO will take that one of the IFRS standard. On Honorable, I don't know if Honorable Kaunda, about the strategy being a normal strategy that is supposed to be there. I do believe that Kaula, sorry. My apologies, Honorable Kaula. Yeah, my apologies, Honorable Kaula. We do believe that, though, when you give a loan, then you just take a debit order, and usually you just get the debit order coming every month. And then when they don't pay the first month, second month, only on the third month, you start chasing. Okay, you would chase from the first month, but you would start then, like giving to legal on the third month. But now, what we have done is you default, we definitely go to visit you, like we've said now, and then talk to you and hear what's the problem, and so that you don't get to legal. Because the other problem that we are encountering, once you don't pay your account for 3 months and we give you over to legal, people don't pay. Once you've given them to the lawyers, so they don't want to pay. So we have to make sure that before we even, give over to legal, we go there, we make sure that you are able to pay. If you can give any amount or reduce your installment, we start restructuring, because we don't really want to lose those clients because they can't pay. Because the moment you hand them to a lawyer, they won't be paying you. So that's the challenge that we do have there. And with the critical posts that were not filled for this time, I really want to bring your attention again, honorable members, that before COVID, we had those posts and they were being filled normally. And if you take it's 2 financial years that we've had COVID. When COVID started, because we're an enterprise that used our own money, we calculated and we had an estimate on how much we were going to lose from the properties when people were not going to pay, and both business finance because most of the businesses were distressed. Then we held on all the posts. We're not filling the posts because we had to make sure that we have the correct budget for all the posts that are going to be filled in. So when we started improving, remember we had July unrest as well that really affected us as Itala because most of our properties were affected. But fortunately, we started seeing our profits going up again. If I can give you like an estimate figure, we're estimating that we're going to lose about 360 million. That's the amount that we wrote to Treasury. But, we ended up, improving and getting the people, because people wanted to go back to their properties quicker and they wanted to recover quicker. So we started getting the money, and then once we could see that we have the money, then we budgeted accordingly for all the posts that are here. I want to assure the members that all the posts that are being shown here are the posts that we do have money to really cover them, all of them, because our collections have improved both from business finance and both from properties. So that's where we are. And then, with Ms. Mapi, I'll leave Ms. Mapisa's question to the HOD, and then I'll come to the figures that are likely to be written off. Honorable Member, at the moment, we can send those figures. We definitely don't have. Once we have it going to the board, we'll definitely send those figures. And then again, just to emphasize that if you look at our clients, they were first hit by drought, and then they came back to us to say, because of drought, you can't pay, and the economic conditions on the downward trajectory also affected them. And then again, with COVID-19 as well as the July unrest, they were also affected. So all those emanated that we lost a lot of money, and most of our clients, even when they were given the payment holidays, they still cannot pay those monies back to us. So that's why we said we'll restructure to give them a chance to start all over again and pay us. Yeah, I think I've covered the post. Oh, the post that were filled, 8 of 26. I know that some of them, I know the one that I just signed, Honorable Chair, last week, I saw here it was still not recorded. But the list is yes, some of them we still not filled yet because we held back. Now that we have the money, then we'll be filling them. So I think the numbers, because of them being interviews every week, we have these interviews, and we have made sure that even on weekends we do have these interviews so that we can fill them. Some are being filled, and and some are still on that. Maybe the numbers might not then tally correctly, but we can check that. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, HOD.
I'll give to CFO to cover the IFRS standard and to HOD then to cover the Ms. Mapisa story. Thank you.
Okay, CFO.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Maybe just to clarify the figures that UGCE was speaking to in terms of the vacancies. GCE, those vacancies, in fact, that statistic was provided by HR this morning. So the update that I was providing the honorable members was as at 23rd of March, 2022, and it will not tally with the report that was submitted to the committee. I wanted to provide the committee with the updated status in respect of that. And then on the question that was asked around the annual financial statements, I can indicate that the annual financial statements are prepared by the internal staff of the entity. What would ordinarily happen as a first layer of assurance is that internal audit would assist the entity in reviewing both the annual financial statements as well as the performance report of the organization before it is submitted to the Auditor General for audit. In this instance, because IFRS is a very technical accounting framework with very few accounting firms in the country having the capacity and capability to build the models that inform the numbers that will go into the financial statements, the internal audit unit of IDFC doesn't have the skill and expertise. Hence, we have gone out to get an expert to then assist in the independent review, but not in the preparation of the annual financial statements. I think the GCE had already alluded to some of the complexities that were introduced by the IFRS standard. You see that figure of 444 million rand. It is not necessarily loans that are performing badly. With the IFRS standard, particularly IFRS 9, it requires banks to be forward-looking in providing for their investments or providing for their loans. So historically, a bank would look at an individual loan data, and based on the historic performance of the loan, it would establish whether or not the loan was performing well or whether it wasn't. Now, banks are required to not only consider the individual performance, which is the historic performance, but they're also required to look at the industry or the sector within which that particular individual operates or the company operates, to look at the domestic economic factors as well as global economic factors, and then come to a figure that is more reliable in terms of whether that debt will be recoverable or not. And in some instances, as GCE has already indicated, if a sector is not performing well, even when you are writing up the loan, before even the first installment is due, you are sometimes required to impair it. So the impairment that you see there does not mean that those loans have been written off or that the entity is not pursuing the recovery of those loans. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, colleagues, any other issues? I don't see any hands on the virtual platform. Yeah, no, we'll go to HOD now. I just want to see if there's any follow-ups here. Okay, Honorable Rogers, before the HOD.
Yeah, it was just the cost of the consultant. One, was it budgeted for? And two, what is the cost?
Okay, just respond to that and then we can go to the HOD. If you don't have the figure, yeah, I'm sure it can be forwarded.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. It was budgeted for, but we will have to revert to the committee on the exact figure. Thank you, Chair.
It's fine. HOD?
No, thank you, Honorable Chair and honorable members. I think Honorable Nkosi is correct. It's the same, Ms. Mapisa, but it was just an execution of ATR family strategic talent sourcing to improve the capability and capacity of IDFC. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, Honorable Nkosi, your mind is at rest now? All right. Colleagues, if there are no other matters, right, I think the issue of the debt, the impairment is a concern. Because and I think the AG has raised this because it makes the issue of the bank being a going concern, an issue. And remember also that Itala is looking at also being upgraded in a sense. So these will be issues that will mitigate against and need to be addressed. So I'm sure that these, you will have to follow up on them. I remember hearing in our hearings in October, November about the impact of the July unrest on Itala as well, because the properties, etc., were severely damaged. And we're not discussing that here, but those are all issues that obviously impact on the functioning and performance. All right. If there are no other issues, colleagues, there are some follow-ups we'll do around things like vacancies and other matters, but that will be when we see you again. Or we'll ask for a written response, not calling you. Thank you very much to the chairperson of the board who had joined us virtually and to the two officials from the entity. We can release you. You're welcome to join, help yourselves to lunch, And yeah, you are released. And thanks to the chair of the board. I see you are with us.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Mr. Khosa.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Okay.
Thank you, members of the committee.
You're welcome. Colleagues, our next and last entity is Itala Soc. They will be coming in shortly. I'm asking Cabo to see whether we can get some doors opened. This place is too stuffy. As we welcome Itala Soc, let's just get IT to assist so that they are able to sort their mics out and log into MS Teams.
Okay. Operating is on. And you can just switch it over. Which one here? Operating is on. Mic is on. Okay. Just switch.
Colleagues, I think we are ready to start. So let's welcome the team from ITALASOC. And we'll ask, well, just to tell you who's here, we are the Committee of Scopa, members present, as well as on the online platform via Teams. We also have, I think, some of the members of the Portfolio Committee who may have joined us virtually, and we have representatives from Treasury who are with us as well. I think the office of the AG might be somewhere there. I haven't seen them, but I'm sure they would be present. So those are who we have with us. The format of the meeting is simple. What we'll do is we'll ask each of you to name yourselves and take an oath or affirmation to speak the truth, and then we'll go into your presentation. I see you're already sharing the screen, so that's fine. You'll take us through. Okay, and there will be no need to repeat the resolutions, just the responses is where we want you to focus. Thanks.
Honorable Chair, honorable members, my name is Nkosi Sibonelo Mkhize. I'm the Deputy Chairman of ITALASOC Limited, and I would like to categorically state that I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. Thank you.
Thank you.
Honorable Chair, my name is Dr. Tulani Vilagazi. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of ITALASOC Limited. I swear that I will tell the truth and the only truth. Help me God. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honorable Chair and members. I am Mohammed Hanif Kafoor. I am the Finance Head at ITALA, and I swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So without further ado, and before you start your presentation, let me just summarize what you will be covering. We'll be talking about your irregular expenditure, Resolution 182, and the condemnation and investigation there, as well as consequence management. Resolution 183, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. Resolution 184, which deals with investigations. And then Resolution 185, which is the material uncertainty about whether you are a going concern and, sustainability. Resolution 186, material losses and impairments. And those are the resolutions that you will be covering. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, and to members again. Chair, I will allow the CEO to take us through the presentation, which will be quite a short one, and probably there will be some time for comments and questions. But maybe just one of the things that I would like to just highlight before we start this is to look at the material uncertainty that is actually plaguing the organization currently. We will get further into it in one of the resolutions, but maybe just to state to the honorable members is that the uncertainty that we are currently facing is the fact that we have been operating under an exemption notice from the Prudential Authority of the Reserve Bank since the organization was founded. And the last exemption notice expired on the 31st of December 2021. Through the MEC's office, as well as our executive, we've been able to request for an extension of this exemption, which will be expiring on the 30th of June 2022. Now, during this period, the Prudential Authority has actually requested that we actually come together with their team and find a way to be able to create a business case for the entity so that we do not keep on having these exemption notices over and over again. The whole essence of it, honorable members, is that we eventually are able to be in a position to be able to apply for a full commercial banking license. But with some of the structural challenges that we have as an entity, we are requiring a bit more time. We will get time to be able to elaborate further on this, but without much further ado, Honorable Chair, can I request that the CEO take us through the presentation? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ndabezitha. Again, good afternoon, honorable members. We are going to discuss on Resolution 182 as a starting point, which matter refers to 2 financial years of 2021 and 2020 financial years, where there are matters that relate to irregular expenditure for both years, which we're reporting that these are still under investigation. The main reason for us still undertaking investigations is that there's been quite a backlog at Italasoc Limited, which runs way back to 2017 and 2019. And those 4 years stretching, we were able then to complete the 2017 and the 2019 financial years, which were completed, and then the application for condonation has actually been tabled through to the Provincial Treasury, which we are actually awaiting a reply. Hence, then the current 2 financial years of 11 cases and 5 cases, our timeline in terms of our timeline that we had put and committed to, Chair, was that by the 31st of March 2022, we would be in a position to have completed those investigations pertaining to most of the expired contracts that had sort of been rolled over. The second one was then relates the findings and investigations. So once our investigations have been completed by the 31st of March 2022, we will then make necessary recommendations to the upper structures, governance within our organization, and then apply the necessary discipline that is following through in terms of any potential recovery of losses or any of the matters that would pertain to that. Chair, I am delighted to report that under the effectiveness of addressing the issue relating to service level agreements, we have been able, as the incoming management team, to make sure that the supply chain management function is now actually located within Italasoc Limited, because for quite some time that function was being shared at group level. We have dedicated staff. In fact, we have a very senior experienced manager that's been appointed, and we have been able to establish our own committees, our BAC, our BEC committees, as well as also getting the discipline of staying on the review of those contracts that would necessarily would have fallen backward in terms of that aspect. From the period of the 1st of April last year to present day, we have not missed contracts in terms of reviews and actually making sure that when there is a process to re-engage in those particular contracts, that discipline is actually carried through. There is a matter under Resolution 183 that pertains to an executive. The executive was eventually dismissed around November 2019. Two amounts, one 600,000, which arose as a result of the incurring of costs in terms of recruitment fees, and also then the 2 million, which comes in terms of misrepresentation of that executive in terms of his previous contract where he was working, and which then led to Italasoc Limited being induced to sign a 2 million sign-on bonus. This matter is now proceeded in terms of legal summons, where we have served the summons as we speak. We are actually commencing with the court proceedings during this quarter, and it is also our intent to pursue this and actually make sure that these funds are actually recovered. We were then got the advice because of covering the 2 amounts, especially the 2.6, the 600,000, because the 2 million sign-on bonus actually led to recruitment fees being paid to that agency, which then created this anomaly of that particular person representing such claim, which was not due to him. We have a criminal case in this respect. So whilst we're pursuing a civil case, there's also a criminal case, case number 93-5-2021. We have actually appointed a legal counsel that is advising us on this matter, so that then we are actually determining the probability in terms of the case. We think, and we have been advised, we have a very a strong case in terms of that particular aspect to deal with this. And then on resolution 185, which Inkosi has touched on early on in terms of the exemption notice. Yes, currently we are engaged in a process with the Prudential Authority where we are actually negotiating certain new terms and conditions of the new exemption notice, which exemption notice will be a transition to a permanent status of Itala Soc Limited operating as a fully fledged banking institution in the near future. Our process at this stage involves us, for instance, making sure that we negotiate how do we continue running certain portfolios, particularly your SME and certain aspects, particularly the public sector deposits, where there could have been a difference of opinion as to whether we could mobilize such deposits. The case in point also around the land bank portfolio. Currently, our exposure to the land bank is about 43 million. We originally had a note of land bank at about 60 million. So that land bank interest and capital has actually been being saved from the scheme that was put by National Treasury around land bank. On the key positions, we currently in the recruitment phase, we actually did secure a number of candidates, about 4 candidates. But the majority of them, because of the what you might call a very litmus test around understanding of banking in general, when you go through the BA20 process, which itself is quite a long, extensive examination by the Prudential Authority, as unfortunately some of the candidates recently were unable to meet that requirement. But we are confident that we are going to present candidates this time that are going to fall into that line. We are also very much in contact and also using the network of SAICA, South African Institute of Chartered Accountants, and also other institutes that are very much close to the banking fraternity to make sure that we acquire that particular expertise. Chair, with your permission, I would like Inkosi just to touch on the chairperson of the board.
Honourable Chair and members, Chair, the way that the Prudential Authority actually operates, every single board member that sits on the board needs to be vetted by them. Every single executive and any other senior manager that reports directly to the CEO needs to be vetted by them. So there's a form and a process that goes through in terms of the vetting and even an interview. So one has been sitting on the board of Itala SOC since 2018 and as a deputy chairperson. But I've been, in essence, been at the helm and driving it since probably around April of 2020, when the previous chairman had left. Because of the fact that I was not independent, in a sense that the shareholder Idfc had nominated me to sit on the board, thus there is no independence. Currently, we are looking for an independent chairperson of the board to be able to sit and be appointed as a chairman. We've been working quite closely with our shareholders, including the MEC, to be able to procure the services of somebody on that caliber, because the cases that we have at the current moment is the fact that there are a lot of people with extensive experience in financial services, but not in banking specifically. On my side, I had submitted an application to the Prudential Authority for the chairmanship of the board, but there were issues or an objection was raised by the Prudential Authority, particularly regarding my independence and the close relationship that one still has with the IDFC. So maybe I'll just leave it for now in the interest of time, Chairman, but should members want more clarity in discussion phase, we'll be able to provide that. Thank you. Thank you, C.
Thank you very much. Colleagues?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nabesit. The next point is our resolution on 185 on 2021, which obviously I'm not going to be giving a lot of details here, just in terms of what is actually articulated there and be too detailed by each point. Safe to say that, for instance, on the cost reduction line, When we assumed the management tenure on the 1st of September 2020, our cost-to-income ratio was at 128%. And we drove a particular program in terms of our RRR strategy, which is to repair, rebuild, and remodel Ithala to an extent that we have been able, as we speak, in terms of our last quarter results, to be at a cost-to-income ratio of 114, which is quite a substantive move, given the exigencies and the factors that pertain to the structural problems and challenges that are at Ithala. It is our intent that we should be able, within the next 2 or 3 quarters, be able to reduce further as we roll out what we call an operating new model. Because some of the challenges, Chair, and the members that might appreciate, is that at Ithala, in terms of the processes and how it was actually structured, we have had a situation where a lot of processing and back office operations was actually not automated, which then meant a lot of hands for putting certain things like putting together an EFT process or opening of accounts, which we now, as the incoming team, changing in terms of that capacity. We continue also to look at the IT system. Currently, the IT system that is there is what is called a disparate IT system with 38 branches, each with having its own AS400 console. Historically, in banking, that's referred to as the Bank Master program. A system which was like version 3 system, which is historical to Ithala. One of the decisions that we've made late last year was actually to consolidate that in terms of collapsing all the decentralized centers and make one instance, so that then the issues of reporting, of compiling our finances and making sure that our charts of accounts, when it comes to the finance department, it doesn't take a long time for us to be able to accrue and generate our results. So that aspect is actually important. And you will note that, for instance, even if you go into our integrated annual report, a lot of our audit issues are more related to IT. So the day we actually solve the IT problem, a lot of those issues will fall by the wayside because of the structural nature of how the business was structured before. We are presently, as part of the strategy, in engaging the Prudential Authority, considering a number of avenues, including an alliance banking, guardian bank, and sponsor bank, where we assume that because of the relationships and also the current dispensation where we don't have a fully banking license, which then means, for instance, one able to participate into the Payment Association of South Africa, PASA, directly. For an example, we are not members of SWIFT, which I'm sure the members are aware with the current European situation where one nation has been taken off the SWIFT. So Ithala is almost suffering that particular challenge for many years. Also, we don't have capabilities such as RTC, real-time clearance. If you want to clear your funds, that your funds can be cleared instantaneously. And also what is called card not present capabilities, where our people should be able to book a car, hire a car from a particular company, and also trade online without presenting the card. So those capabilities are capabilities that we require in a new relationship beyond the ABSA sponsorship, which is expiring on the 31st of December 2023, that we then looking at this aspect that will help us to grow and build Ithala going forward. I've already touched on the model redesign and review and the AS400. And then lastly, obviously, our new exemption notice was finalized, and currently we are looking at the 6 months transitional period, after which there will be an exemption notice that is now geared towards actually having a final status of Ithala going not just every year or every expiry period to seek an exemption notice, make it a fully fledged banking institution, and also then make sure that it becomes part and parcel of the South African banking system. If I may, Chair and the members, the challenge in the South African context of banking industry is that if you look at the two tiers, you've got your top tier banks, your so-called big six at the top, and then your lower bank, that is your mutual bank at about 10 million of depositors' funds. There is nothing in the middle. Now, in terms of dispensation worldwide, including certain countries in Africa like Nigeria and so on, the middle gap in terms of our banking system needs to be filled. Ithala is already playing that particular role in terms of that aspect. However, the dispensation, the Banks Act is lagging behind in terms of making sure that there is a second tier bank that is not necessarily a commercial bank, but plays a particular role that actually is also not a sort of demand-led, because our products are demand-led products. We look at what society is looking for. We create rural home loans, pension-backed loans. You don't have to wait until you're 65 to enjoy the investment that you have accrued over years. Those are some of the things that are quite unique to Ithala, which we're hoping with this kind of a new strategy that we're rolling, that we should be able to do that. So it is our hope that the issue of going concern and also, Chair, with respect to certain developments recently, although I don't know whether the visitor can speak about it yet, but we've been trying to secure a number of other financial aspects of our business, particularly the guarantee position of our group, which I'm happy that we seem to be making headway as we're going along that path. Resolution 186 obviously pertained to the aspect of the credit watch list. At this juncture, I would like our GM Finance designate, Mr. Mohammed Kafur, to take us through this section with your permission, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Chair. So in terms of the material losses and impairments, there has been a lot of improvements in the current financial year, and these improvements are coming through improved collection processes, including proactively restructuring a lot of the accounts that have defaulted and avoidance of write-off of these, as well as we renegotiate contractual terms with the clients in order to prevent any more losses. And then further to that, once we do write off, we continue to pursue these, and we do have post write-off recoveries. I can tell you at the end of December 2021, compared to the prior year, we've only written off 1.9 million in terms of bad debts, which compared to our total loan book of 2.1 billion only equates to 0.09%. In terms of the impairments as well, we've seen a lot of improvements in the current financial year for the impairments on the loan book. We actually, as at the end of February, we actually sit at break even, where we haven't raised much impairments year on year on the loans. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, floor is open to you. I think the issues that have been raised sharply would be the issue of the going concern, and the bank getting its license due to expire in June 2022, the investigations, and of course the turnaround plan there. Yeah. Honourable Kaula, I see your hand. Honourable Rogers, Honourable Nkosi. Is it just three? I don't see anyone on the virtual platform. Okay, so in that order, please.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson, colleagues, the department and Ithala, Nkosi Asizwe, the Chairperson. No, Chairperson, you see, what you have spoken about CEO is very important. I came here in 2019, in 2009, with Honourable Nkosi, and at the time I was serving as the Popular Committee of Economic Development. This issue was there when Honourable Ndombela was our chairperson. This issue of stop and go in Italy, the license, 12 months expiring, 6 months expiring, it was there. I went to exile in 2014 I'm back home. It's still there. But what I want to say is, or you say the legacy of Italy is huge. This is a bank that was established by Inkosi. And now the chairperson of the bank is Inkosi. If you can achieve what you are saying at the time when Inkosi is chairperson, you'll have made my day. Please achieve it. You have been promising from 2009. There have been promises of securing for a fully fledged license. This is very, very important. You know, these things of these stop and goes, really, it's very scary because you don't know what will happen in 12 months. So it's a very important issue that has to be achieved, really. My second comment, Chair, is with regard to that 2 million erroneously paid to the executive. You know, law in South Africa is very funny. A student gets erroneously paid 8 million at WUSO. A student is taken to court, immediately charged, and student is found guilty. It didn't take 12 months, but here it's taking us more than 24 months. Why? A student there suffered for having received 8 million, used 800,000 of it. Here, the executive received 2 million, used all of it. It's very, very unfair. Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Rod.
Thanks, Chair. Just a comment and one question. Obviously, the most important thing here is for financial sustainability, that this should become an independent, financially sound institution and not an institution that continues to run at a loss. And I must say that your book debt and your write-offs are a lot better than Itala itself. We were here earlier, and their figure stands at 49%. So well done on that. But my question is, if you look at Resolution 185 of 2021, and your loss was 75.4 and then dropped down to 31.6, do you have any idea what losses we can expect to incur in this financial year? Thanks, Chair.
Honorable Nkosi.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Sikhuleke enkosini Gqab. Siyajabula ukuba nenkosi esizwe. Ihola into ezibaluleke kangaka zabantu bakithi. Now I want to pose only two questions. I might not have heard the presenter around the question of irregular expenditure. What I picked up is that the irregular expenditure for 2 financial years has been investigated and concluded. But I didn't hear as to whether they have been submitted to the provincial treasury for condonation. I missed that part. If I could be clarified on that one. Inkosi has raised the issue that is very old. I don't know why I'm not getting and remembering first the 3 conditions that the Prudential Authority put on Itala. If my memory serves me correctly, it was during the times of Minister Godin. There were 3 conditions that they put. We have been pursuing them all along until we got disrupted by COVID. So want to find out if Itala has met all 3, because the issuing of the license was by then dependent on them. Specifically, there were 3 of them. So I wanted to be clarified on those, because this stop and go of Honorable Kaula, we know it, as he has indicated, it was caused by those 3. I don't know where are the problems with Itala to meet them. Now I don't understand. By the time we're engaging before getting disrupted by COVID, we knew that Itala by then had not met them. So that's why then I'm asking this a grade R question. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thanks, Honorable Nkosi. It's actually maybe a grade R question, but an important one because this is going on for long. And I think given the adverse events in the world, that also has an impact somewhere along the line on our economic condition and things that happen here as well. So for me, I think the main issue is the issue of the financial sustainability and, the attainment of that's very elusive license. And we would like to get a response from the team here. CEO?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Indeed, Honorable Kaula, the legacy of Itala goes a long way. Yes. Yeah. I happen to be the nephew of the late Inkosi Henry Lawrence Tolagele Mkiza, who was actually in class with Inkosi Shenge at Adams. So I do know that relation that is very strong, especially its role that it plays at Makai, which is one of our motivation as the new incoming team to have chosen to come back home from wherever we were to take this clarion call and see whether we can, with all the support that we get from Inkosi, as well as the stakeholders of Itala at large, that we turn this tide around. So it is indeed something that we're not here for purely as by the way, but we are seriously committed. Some of us have moved families back to home so that then we are able to focus on this aspect. It is an indictment on the African continent, particularly in Southern Africa, that up to now, there is no institution that we can point and say this is ours. And if an epitaph would be written on my tombstone as a banker, I would like it to say Itala was founded or established, and that would be a mark. The issue of the 2 million and the delay, correctly, your observation is correct in terms of the unequalness, in terms of the justice as we know it in this country or anywhere in the world. However, one of the things that immediately happened, the executive was actually fired in terms of having concluded or actually been alleged to have done that. And that dismissal when it comes to the banking fraternity is also a very steep one, because it means, for an example, this executive cannot avail himself anywhere in future along the banking fraternity. So there is a submission that gets made through to the Prudential Authority and the Reserve Bank, almost a blacklisting of that particular individual. So there's already an aspect of dismissal that results into certain sanctions before the criminal part and before the civil part. Which then makes it very critical. I recall when I was still a young man as a teller, that not to balance your teller position could actually put you in prison for 10 rand. And that's the type of discipline that is required, because this industry is not about money, it's just about trust and having custodianship over someone else's money that can trust you whilst they are asleep. Correct, Honorable Rogers. The financial sustainability remains a pivotal point and a point of focus for us. Our forecast for this financial year, if you look what happened previously, that was quite a big jump, a big reduction of about 58% from 74. We are projecting somewhere around 44 million by end of this financial year, largely driven by two factors. One, the civil unrest in July 2021 has actually made us to incur some obviously unplanned costs, which I think it was to the tune of about 5.1 million, if I'm not mistaken. And those exigencies have actually created sort of a pushback in terms of where we wanted to be during this time. However, our impairments, our loans impairments advances ratio is below the threshold of 8%, which means we actually meet that requirement there. And we are not seeing a whole lot of other bad signs around our book. Our book still remains very performing and incredible. And also one of the important things that we are also getting that aspect that if, for instance, the land bank note was not present, we would see a better improved position by about 14 million. The reason the land bank is holding us back because remember there's no rating now for the land bank, and therefore our model, the IFRS 9 model, creates that we take particular objective analysis of saying for the 43 million that we still have with land bank, about 14 million to 16 million should be what we call a lower bound, should something that we could reserve. But as we know, it's unlikely that a full sovereign would default. So government and National Treasury continues to be behind land bank, and if we had our way, if the scheme that was proposed, for instance, there was a lot of schemes that was proposed, unfortunately the senior creditors, especially your international note holders, rejected the scheme that had been proposed. We should have actually improved that position and therefore make us to release the 14 million that is actually provided for that aspect. The correct Honorable Nkosi, the Provincial Treasury, we did submit the condonation application through to the Provincial Treasury. I had mentioned it earlier on in terms of our regular expenditure. The three benchmarks. So I know that we might speak past each other as to which ones, but what I will do, I will sort of go through each and every one of them. Currently, there are about 7 benchmarks, financial benchmarks, that we actually do that. Mohammed, I don't know whether you could quickly just get to the slide, because I'll rattle the numbers off my mind, but I might just be slightly out. The first one is obviously our CAR, capital adequacy ratio, right? And that ratio is quite important, that if we are able to fund our business in banking, we normally refer to it as risk-weighted assets, which is a fancy name for loans and advances. And if we are then able to meet that requirement, it then means we are able to fund. Now, the threshold that we must be above is 15%. So as we speak, as at December 31st, we are sitting at 19.50%, which means we have a buffer at least of about 3% above the threshold. And that's important. And if you go historically, you'll see that in 2019, in March, it was 17.67. March 2020, it was 17.96. 2021, 17.4. And November, 18.88. So constantly, Itala has been hitting the mark on the capital adequacy. The second one is a leverage ratio of not less than 5%. The leverage ratio, the function of that leverage ratio is purely speaks to our solvency and so on. It must not be not less than 5%. As we speak, since maybe from March 2020 to present, we're sitting at double that figure at 12.10%, which means there's a tick again that Itala is getting. And then there's also what we call the liquid assets. In other words, if all people who bank at Itala would one day to decide to come at the door and say, we want our money now, and then we would then be able then to pay or not to pay, we at least 7.5% of our liabilities. Now, liabilities in banking is deposits that we borrow from the public. 7.5% of those must be liquid. In other words, they must be readily available for us to pay the dues that are coming on that. I'm happy and delighted, Chair, to report that as of December 2021, we are double that figure at 12.73%. And it's holding steady. In fact, the highest was in March 2020, where we're sitting at even 14%. So that's a tick for Itala. That means we are actually managing the balance sheet very well. And then there's another ratio called JAWS ratio. The JAWS ratio is how greater is the income compared to the operating costs. And it's a very simple ratio itself, in the sense that when I was at school, I literally think of a jaw and how wide is the jaw and how wide are the costs and so on. Itala is actually in a positive space. Our JAWS ratio is a positive 5.64%, and it's been holding steady for quite some time, bar maybe March 2021. Where there was obviously a factor where you had an endowment effect of what had happened with COVID and so on. And then the last one that we are also outperforming is our impaired ratio on our loans and advances, which I think when Honorable Rogers was asking the question, I mentioned a bit. The ratio, we should not be greater than 8%. We are holding steady at 7.10%. And then some other years, we've even gone down to 4.2%, which means we are running quite a quality book. But Chair, as you know, in banking, sometimes when your impairment is very good, some bankers somewhere will accuse you of not lending. So because the more you write, then you get into trouble on the impairment side. Maybe we're too squeaky clean and not opening up our books as Honorable Kawula would maybe want us to do, and get to those gogos and give them some loans emakhaya. Then there are two ratios financially that are a problem challenge for us. The first one is the profitability aspect. Where we had committed that to the Prudential Authority that will remain profitable at all times. That profitability, if you track it on a month-to-month basis, I'm sure Inkosi will remind me when I just joined, before COVID, there was a 5-month consecutive period where Itala was actually reporting profits for a period of 5 months. And then you had this COVID coming through. And I'm sure the House is is aware of the fact that because Itala is not a bank per se, the rest of the top tier banks were given what is called capital relief. So what would they've done to us? They've told us, don't have a capital ratio of 15%. You can have a capital ratio of 17 or 18, which then would have given us room to lend to people without breaking the rules. That never happened for Itala, but the big boys, they got it, and the big girls, they actually got it, and that capital relief was quite important. However, there's an attestation here, there's a record, I think it's reported at Scopa. Itala was able to do a capital relief of 100 million during that financial year, where most of our people who were struggling were actually availed facilities. And I'm happy to say by end of 2021, that book itself on the capital relief has actually gone back to a performing book. So most of the people that were really struggling and were given help, they were doing that. So the profitability lies in dealing with the profitability problem, lies in how we currently structured. Itala is a very unique problem in the sense that you've got very few people working, less than 500 people work there. But because this is a legacy institution that over the years was a department at Itala Development Finance Corporation, and then it morphed into its own entity. However, the structure internally never followed through. So what happened, yes, it was hived off from IDFC. When you're hiving off at shareholding level and setting a separate board, there needed to be a follow through to say, what about operations? What about shared services? What about this and that? Which is now what we are dealing with, which will then unlock the value that is sitting there in that particular business. So we are projecting in terms of finances that by financial year 2024, if I'm not mistaken, Mohammed, we would get into actually a profitable position. If a civil unrest had not taken place, we were actually contemplating the early part of 2024 to return into a profitable positions once we have turned a lot of other stuff. And then the last one is the cost to income ratio, which we need to achieve. And the Prudential Authority set a ratio of 78%, that we must not be above 78%. In terms of that, that's important because obviously the cost should not run ahead of our income. So in an actual sense, when we came on board, it was 128, which means for every rand that we're making, we were losing 28 cents. So we have pushed that position since then. We currently, and I'm delighted to say, we've improved to 114 from 128 within a space of 18 months. By just focusing on certain things, and we're hoping this position will be better off once our operating model has been reviewed. I think that was one question there. Yeah, I think I've covered all of them, unless I've missed one. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mlalose. Colleagues, I think it's a matter of waiting to see how things turn. There's not much you can do. I mean, the measures are being put in place, but it is slow. Yeah, that's the issue. So I'm not certain about what's going to happen in June in terms of what you can do as an entity. I don't know. Maybe we leave it at that and take a progress report. Colleagues, is that okay? They're gossiping there. Okay, fine. Can we release them? Okay, thank you very much. We wish you well. We can see the work being done. It obviously needs more than wishes, but at this point, I think that's about the best we can do with you, but thank you very much. There is lunch. You're welcome to help yourselves there. I'm not sure what's being left now. Chinga is laughing, so I don't know. But there is, yes. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair and honorable members. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Colleagues, we will now go to the department, right? Maybe you can just give yourselves 5-minute stretch break. Yeah. And then we'll come back here at 10 past. Right.
That one is ahead.
Oh, it's ahead. Okay, at 5 past, sorry.
Left 2 minutes.
2 minutes. Let them settle. You know what? Just sort of the mics and the teams.
Yeah.
Colleagues, we're ready to start. There are some members who are out, but they will join us, and we've got members on the virtual platform. Honorable Cele is there, I can see, and Honorable de Klerk are with us on the virtual platform, together with colleagues from the Portfolio Committee, Provincial Treasury, and of course here we have with us the members of Scopa. So HOD and your team, the procedure is simple. We're here for the follow-up hearings after the 2021, the full hearing when the report was released, the report of the AG, and we heard your responses, and then we had some follow-up resolutions, which you will respond to today. So the procedure is we'll ask each one of you to name yourself, and if you haven't already, take an oath of affirmation to speak the truth. I think it will be just one. 3. Only the HOD has been here previously. Okay. To take an oath of affirmation to speak the truth, and then we'll go into your presentation. You don't need to repeat the resolutions, the content of the resolutions, which start at resolution 161, and they go through 161 and go, you continue, because we do have them with us, but we will ask you to share your screen when you're doing your presentation. So let's start with the swearing of the oath of affirmation. And then just press 0, OK, to get your mic activated. Oh, they're on. Okay.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and the members. My name is Khaya Mthethwa, the Chief Financial Officer of ATIA. I swear that I'll speak the truth, only but the truth. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson and members. My name is Fezile Mbuli. I swear to tell the truth and only the truth, so help me God. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Honourable Chairperson and Honourable members. My name is Heinz Kuhn. I swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help me God.
Much. The team your team HOD will go into the presentation. Just to briefly summarize, Resolution 161 talks about your regression in financial viability. Resolution 162 covers the material impairment of 31.58 million. Resolution 163 deals with irregular expenditure and condonation thereof. Resolution 164 deals with fruitless and wasteful expenditure, the prior year as well as previous years. And then Resolution 165 looks at investigations, and those are the resolutions we'd want you to be covering. Over to you and your team.
No, thank you very much, Honourable Chair and Honourable members. Let me first apologize profusely, Chair, because we seem to be having a men's quartet. We do have a colleague who's a female, but she said she will join us online. I thought I should raise that issue as part of the disclaimer. The CFO, Mr. Mtetwa, next to me, who will be making a presentation, and also supported by Mr. Mbuli, who deals with the human capital management issues, as well as Mr. Haynes Kuhn, who will deal with legal services and also specifically with regard to issues that relate to investigations. Ms. Kwela will also assist with some of the inputs, who has joined us virtually. The CFO is trying to connect and just to link the presentation with your indulgence, Honorable Chair. Thank you.
1 second, please. Honorable Kaula.
Thanks, Chair. I'm sorry to do this, Chair, but I received the reports for all the entities, but I looked for the report from the department and I never saw it. So if maybe we can be
Oh, the department's
I never received it.
Okay, Kabo, can you just re-email? I know I received them. I'm just trying to think. Let me check my email. Okay, Kabo, can you just send to members? Okay, it'll come to you. Don't worry. Okay, continue. Please share the screen, okay? Colleagues, your the report has been sent to you.
I was asking if can someone send something. Everyone is to join. They joined.
The screen sharing.
Yeah.
You got it sent it, Kabo?
Yeah, I was sent it now. I was dealing with this screen, the issue of the IT first.
I'm trying to find your mail.
I don't know if all of them, if the person wants to leave them on the service, she send them, that's fine.
Look for the link.
Chat. What's up on the link? He sent it, what's in it? You will find out from outside? Okay. Okay. Oh, you're flying from Africa from.
Yeah, I've got the
I can
link.
get it.
Hey, do you want the link, Kabo? I've got it here.
No. It's not the link that they want.
Oops, can we not start?
There's a laptop which is.
Okay.
No, somebody who is doing this group but is outside.
Oh, I see. Okay.
It's in the lobby.
Okay.
Yeah.
And our members, you sent the report. So what I can do is I can actually send it.
You can start.
No, I'll do. Okay, clearing it down.
The present. Thank you, Honorable Chair and honorable members. We are ready to make a presentation. We have Part A and Part B. Part A dealing with the Scopa Resolution 161/2021 and 162 and 163, 164 and 165, and Part B rather, that deals with transversal resolutions 290, 291 and 292. I'm going to hand over to the CFO to take us through the presentation. Thank you very much.
Let me also just welcome the chairperson of the or the members of the portfolio committee who are online as well. So they are members. Continue.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson and members. I'll just follow the guidance from the Chairperson to say that we're not going to read the resolution, but we're just going to go straight to the responses. On Resolution 161 of 2021, on our response is that the cash flow statement that reflected a net cash outflow of 73 million from operating activities. This resulted in a negative cash and cash equivalent as at the end of the period of 22 million, which then reflects as an overdraft. And in the 2019-2020 financial year, the department had the payables, so which means we collect the tax receipts, and then from there we pay to the revenue fund. So we had a balance of about 58 million, so which means due to having a lockdown around that time in March 2020, so the department could not process the final receipt that we received of about 58 million. That's why then that payment was then paid over when we were then easing the lockdown, and then it was paid in the 2020-2021 financial year. That now means that in both these financial years, it was paid in one financial year, so which means there was a collection of 2020 of 1920 was paid together with the collection that was received in 2021, which then made us to have more money that was paid over, that then resulted just as a negative outflow of cash. And now what we have done also is that as a department, we are looking strictly on our cash flow. We are monitoring it regularly. As a result, also when we are having the payments that we do on a monthly basis, we do check that we are still within our commitments together with what we're going to pay is what we have, because we receive money 12 months period. And also furthermore is that what we have as a measures that this thing will not reoccur is that since at the end of this financial year, all the receipts that were collected in 2020, 2021, it was paid over, and as a result, we did not have the payables, so which means whatever we collected this year will be the one that we're going to pay. And with the statement of financial position of the department for 2020-2021 period, it shows the matrix of current assets minus the current liabilities. It was more remaining unchanged from the 2019-2020 previous financial year, which was around 27 million. And the reason for current liabilities will always exceed the current assets in the department due to the timing differences on the surrender of revenue. And the revenue that is collected in March normally gets paid in the Provincial Revenue Fund in April. So as such was recorded in the current liabilities on the face of our financial statements, of the annual financial statements. So in addition, the time difference in expenditure, which is processed on the final day of the financial year, was only physically disbursed in cash in April 2021. So this resulted in the cash book overdraft, when in fact the bank balance reflected a positive balance in the March on the 31st of March 2021. Both of the above timing difference did not have an impact on the financial viability of the department, as a department also, if you're looking at our total assets, still exceed our total liabilities. Also, what one needs to bring to attention is that even the AG on their report, they did note that their financial viability assessment is based on them looking at the department financial statements amounts, and they are trying to adjust it to show the accrual accounting basis or concept, while we are on modified cash basis. On resolution 162 of 2021 on the impairment, the impairment of assets, it seeks to ensure that the entities or the department's assets are not carried more than their recoverable amount. In the case where there is an indication of impairment of the financial assets, an estimation of the reduction in the recorded carrying value is done to reflect the best estimate of the amount of the future economic benefits expected to be received from the assets. So this is recorded in the notes in the to the financial statement. So also when you're looking at the AG report on the material impairment, it has been brought to the attention of the users as an emphasis of a matter, but it was not an audit finding. So in the report, since this information, it was correctly disclosed on our annual financial statements. So, and also depending on the court processes that are still there, that are related to these data, the department is compelled to apply the correct and accurate accounting disclosure of impairment. Meaning that with regard to the progress of recovering the amounts, the matters remain pending in the High Court, and the action between the MEC for ATA versus soft skills, communication, 100cc and other, and the action between the MEC Finance for MEC Finance versus Golding and other are both awaiting notice to set down for trial by the registrar of the High Court. It is evident that the High Court trial roles has been delayed substantially due to the COVID-19 pandemic, and that only urgent matters have been enrolled since April 2019. The attorneys of record representing the Honorable MEC for ATA have been instructed to apply for a preferential date for a pre-trial conference, which must occur prior to the matter being set down for trial. And ATA has been informed that the attorneys for the Honorable MEC for Finance have similarly been instructed. In addition, the criminal trial against Messengers, Goldings, and Mkhize commenced during 2020, and numerous witnesses have testified in the matter, which was last on the roll during November 2021. The matter was heard on 23 and 24 February 2022, this financial year, and the senior state advocate who is proceeding, who is prosecuting the matter has nonetheless been instructed to apply for the compensation order in terms of Section 300 of the Criminal Procedure Act, number 51 of 1997, in the event that the accused are convicted of crimes that they stand accused of. On Resolution 163 of 2021, the department has completed the determination test for the irregular expenditure that incurred during the period which is 2014-2015 to 2019-2020 financial year, and the irregular expenditure of 581 that was incurred in the previous financial year, and those that have been referred for forensic investigations are still in progress, and all forensic investigations are dealt with by the forensic unit in the office of the Premier after the function was transferred from the Provincial Treasurer. And the investigation relating to report FRO 7 of 2018 was finalized by the service provider and issued to the Integrity Management and Forensic Investigation Units in the Office of the Premier for review before being issued to the department. And the department is still waiting for that report, so it has not yet been received or submitted to us. The investigation relating to report FRO 4 of 2018, the draft report is under review by the Chief Corporate Investigator and will be issued to the Director in January 2022 for further review. And the investigation related to the report FR 37 of 2018 is in progress, and the Senior Corporate Investigator within the Forensic Investigation Units at OTP is currently analyzing the document. And the department has made a submission to the Provincial Treasury requesting for the condonation of 62,592,882 rand and 91 cents that relate to the expenditure, to the irregular expenditure incurred in the 2015-2016 financial year and 2017-2018 financial year. So the condonation approval is still pending by the Provincial Treasury, and the submission for the remaining financial year, we're finalizing it, and it will be made to Provincial Treasury before the end of this month. And also, maybe on this one, just to add, for the past 2 weeks, we have been receiving correspondence from Treasury asking for further information in our application for condonation that we have submitted to them. On the part 2 of the findings where we needed to give more information and the stake taken, we have then attached the attachment with full details, which we have then also shared with the chairperson, but it contains some of the information that is confidential. So I'm not sure whether maybe I can be guided, whether can I go through that, or because we did attach those annexures that they've got the full steps that we have taken and the progress that has been made. So we've got 2 attachments, which was attachment 1 and attachment 2, but it's just that it contains also the names of the people that were implicated. When we're looking at the measures to implement to avoid this for recurrence, what we have done or what we have put in place, consequence management is implemented timeously to prevent the reoccurrence of irregular expenditure, and implementation of the circular on irregular expenditure that was issued by the accounting officer. It outlined the procedures to manage irregular expenditure, informs employees of consequences of not complying with the legislation. And also the department is implementing a transfer payment policy that guides the introduction and processing of all transfer payments to be in line with the PFMA. The department is also in the process of establishing the contract management unit, which will be tasked to close monitoring of a project progress and also align payment of services rendered in terms of the contract. Because currently with our organogram that we are having, is just the contract management does not sit under SCM, it's sitting under knowledge management. So we have now tried to align it with the guidelines from Treasury to make sure that it is in the correct directorate. And we have the organogram that we have proposed, so it's sitting from there. The department has ensured that all new transfers and subsidies are approved by the relevant Treasury prior to payment, and the irregular register is updated with all irregular expenditure identified and disclosed in the financial statement. Also, we are conducting an annual SCM workshop that covers the processes and procedures that need to be followed for procurement, including also the bid committees that we also take them for a refresher training. We are also enforcing compliance with the applicable laws and regulations. And also we are strengthening our of internal control that relate to the compliance with procurement processes, proper authorization of transfer payment, and also proper approval of scope and extension. On Resolution 164, 2021, on this one, the investigation on the fruitless and wasteful expenditure that we incurred in the 2020-2021 financial year and in the prior year are also in progress. We're just waiting for finalization of the letters responding from those whom we have identified, and the respective managers have been requested the relevant officials to make those written representation in respect of the fruitless and wasteful expenditure that we incurred in the reporting period prior making an informed decision, and the anticipated completion time, including the implementation of consequence management, write-off, and recovery where it was applicable. And the main the measures that we have implemented to avoid this occurrence is that the department continues to enforce the compliance with the fruitless and wasteful framework that has been issued by Treasury in May 2014. And furthermore, also as a department, we have developed and implemented a payment checklist, which is used to identify any non-compliance with which may result in a wasteful and fruitless expenditure. And also we have developed and issued circulars on fruitless and wasteful expenditure just to remind the employees. And then on Resolution 165, on this one, Honorable Chairperson and the members, we have attached a second attachment with full details that is also listing the findings that were there and also the measures as per that's related to the investigations that we are having. So also the information that we sent, we did highlight it as confidential since it also contained the names of the okay. Then if we go to the transversal resolution, Resolution 290 on filling of critical posts. On this one, the department has filled all senior management positions and is also seized with filling all vacant critical positions. So the current vacancy rate that we have at the department is 7%, which is below the minimum threshold of 10% as set out by DPSA. And all approved critical management positions have been filled as follows. So for a Chief Director, District Management, it was filled on the 1st of January 2022. Also Chief Director for Economic Planning, Program 5, it was also filled on the same day, which is January 2022. And the Director in the Office of the HOD was also filled from the 1st of February 2022. However, we have also since found out that there are some other senior management that have since resigned, like a Chief Director from the Office of the HOD, which is Babalwa Mapisa, who is now at Itala. So she resigned with effect from 1 March. And also we have another Chief Director that has also resigned with effect from 1 April. But it's just for additional information for the current situation that we have. And also we have recruited for trade and investment and communications and executive support. We have also recruited in February this financial year. Resolution 291 related to compliance with HR matters. As a department for signing of performance agreement, we are sitting at 99%. For security vetting, we are sitting at 96%. On submission of financial disclosures, we're sitting at 100%. And on verification of qualification, we are sitting on 100%. So the department, through the Office of the HOD, has issued warning letters for non-complying employees with a view to administer disciplinary action against them on their continued failure to adhere to the rules and regulations. And the above table depicts the current status of compliance. On Transversal Resolution 292, the SMS members and employees in various categories, namely middle management, employees working in SCM and finance unit, and ethics officers declare their financial interests annually as per the financial disclosure framework, and ethics officers verify the financial interest disclosed by SMS members and other various categories. So the 2020-2021 verification process for SMS was finalized in May 2021, whilst the verification of other category was finalized in August 2021. The newly appointed employees under the categories mentioned above are expected to declare their financial interest within 30 days of their appointment, and this process is coordinated by the ethics officers. Through the quarterly anti-fraud and corruption awareness, HR employees are encouraged to utilize the National Anti-Corruption Hotline to report any incidents of fraud or corruption. On the second one, the SCM do check the CSDs to ensure that the suppliers are not state employees prior to the awarding of any contract, and also a contract is not awarded if any of the directors is an employee of the state. So we do check the compliance with the CSD. On Transversal 292, to continue, on officials doing business with the state, no reports were received on cases of HR officials doing businesses with the state. And on the last one, the steps to implement consequence management in relation to the transgression, it was not applicable since there were no employees that we have, or no officials that we have identified that were doing business with the state. Thank you, Chairperson and the members.
Very much, CFO. Colleagues, the floor is open to you for issues to raise or comment. Show of hands, please. I see Honorable Nkosi, Honorable Kaula. Okay, I see the two of you. Honorable Nkosi, let's start with you.
No, I've got only one question. And this question is flowing from the last two entities that presented their own progress reports. From there up to the motherboard, I am worried about the report on the irregular and fruitless and wasteful expenditure. And I am not getting any feel that the investigations pointed at the wrongdoers in terms of not following the procedures. This is what I noticed. So I would want to find out why that is not given to us, including the consequence management where wrongdoers were identified. The linked to that one, because it's on both irregular and fruitless expenditure, the first question. The second one, I wanted just to be clarified as to whether the investigation of irregular expenditure for the financial years from 2018 up to now, 2020, 2021, are being investigated by the Premier's office, if I had the mention of the Premier's office and whatever. You know why I'm worried about the issues of irregular expenditure is that there is no progress that is happening in our government since the National Treasury gave that function to our provincial treasury. I don't know whether the problem is with the provincial treasury or is with the government departments. But flowing from the 3 reports that I was listening to, it tells me that even if the submission to the provincial treasury without clear outcomes of investigations and consequence management, that irregular expenditure is not likely to be condoned by the provincial treasury. I wanted just to mention that because it worried me when the mother department is also doing like the 2 Italas. Both the 2 Italas did not want to indicate any investigation and consequence management because these are like one coin, 2 sides of the coin. Investigation done, those who are found to be offside are put back online. This is what I picked up. Thank you very much, Chair.
Kaula.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, colleagues on the department. Honorable Nkosi has said